Hi, third graders. I am wondering if that dog, Jemima, who's really a boy, is going to get better. And I'm also still wondering about that secret room. I wonder if Mary's going to tell anyone about it. I wonder if the ghosts she thinks she's seeing are real. Let's find out. Chapter 13, The Hidden Room. That night, Mary returned to Colin's room, wondering what mood she would find him in. To her relief, he seemed happy to see her. "Sit," he said rather grandly, pointing to the end of his bed. "Now I want to know more about this magic garden." Mary didn't need any more encouragement. She had explored some more with Dickon that afternoon, and she had so much that she wanted to tell Colin. "I will, but then you must spit and promise not to breathe a word to anyone. It really is the most wonderful place." Her eyes shone. "There are hundreds of trees and plants. The moss glows, and there are strange plants that look like giant umbrellas." Her words came faster as she tried to convey the magic of the garden. "There's an ancient temple that looks as if it's grown up out of the ground, with a lake inside, and a path lined with statues, and a stream that can heal wounds. There are animals there too, more sleeping under the ground still until spring comes. And there are birds, a robin who reveals secrets, and a dog who is master of it all." "That last bit sounds like rot. But is there really a lake inside of a temple?" Colin asked eagerly. "Well, maybe you wouldn't call it a lake," Mary said. "It's more like a pond, but there is a stream, and I believe it can heal. Now, you promised to spit," she reminded him. Colin shifted in his bed. He spoke awkwardly, as if he didn't like admitting he didn't know something. "Mary, you may need to educate me on how to spit." Mary laughed, and she spat on her hand and held it out. "Oh," Colin said, blinking. "Surprisingly simple." He copied her, and then they shook hands. "Now we have spat and shaken. We can never break the promise," she told him earnestly. "I won't tell a soul," said Colin. "You have my word. Now I want to know more about this dog. Maybe you will be able to train it," he said. "I have a book on training dogs somewhere on my bookcase." He pointed across the room. "Go, fetch it." Mary laughed. "I most certainly shan't if you talk to me like that." She sat down on the wheelchair instead. "When was the last time you used this wheelchair?" "I said go fetch me the book," Colin said crankily. She still ignored him. "I don't believe your back is half as painful as you make it out to be." "And I know that you didn't kill your mother like you said," retorted Colin. "So who's the bigger liar here?" Mary was shocked. "How do you know?" "I said to the maid who cleans my room that I had heard you moving about, and I demanded she told me who you were. She said you were an orphan and that both your parents died in a hospital of cholera. She was very clear that you weren't a murderess." Mary felt a lump in her throat. She wished what he had said was true, but she knew that she had been responsible for all of it. Not wanting to talk, she changed the subject. "Colin, do you trust me? Because I want to show you something." "Why would I trust you?" he said. She raised her eyebrows. He had the grace to look slightly ashamed and then nodded. "All right, very well, Mary. But I'm not going outside," he said warningly. "Well, this isn't outside," said Mary. She took the wheelchair over to his bed. "Now, can I help you in?" "No," he said, his cheeks flushing. "I do not want you to see my back where the lump is growing. Now turn the other way. I can manage on my own." Mary went over to stand by the door and waited with her back turned to him. She heard him grunting with effort and cursing under his breath, but at long last he cleared his throat. "You may turn around now." He was sitting in his chair, his dressing gown over his pajamas. His face was pale. She hurried behind him and pushed him out into the corridor. "So, I have trusted you tonight," he said, glancing at her. "I believe you should trust me in return. Tell me why you believe that you are a murderess." Mary hesitated. She knew how hard it had been for him to agree to leave his bed, and she felt she owed him at least something in return. "Well, one time I wished my mother to be dead." she said in a tiny voice. I was angry because she didn't love me, so I wished her to be dead, and then it happened. The cholera came, and then both she and Daddy, they were gone. I think I am a murderess, Colin. But Mary, I made it happen, she insisted, glaring at him. She didn't want him trying to make her feel better. She knew it was her fault and that she had to live with the guilt of what she had done. He looked very alarmed. Very well, he said hastily. If you say it is so, then I believe you. He stared, and then he looked panicked. But if you take me to the garden, I will murder you. Mary frowned. I'm not taking you to the garden. I'm taking you into that room. She pointed to the room with the murals. There's something that you need to see. She wheeled him inside. She stared at the murals as she found the hidden catch, and the door opened into a secret room. What is this place? He said in astonishment as she pushed him into the sparkling room. The radiant moonlight fell on the silvery cobwebs, and then the gems on the gown started to glitter brightly. As Colin looked around, his shoulders tensed up and his voice rose. Was this my mother's room? I don't like it here. Mary, take me back. Wait, said Mary, hurrying over to a pile of photographs. You need to see these. I was 3 when your mother died, and you and I are about the same age. What do you remember of that time? I don't know and I don't care. Take me back to my room, Colin insisted. Colin! Mary took the box of loose photographs over to him. Just take a look at these. Don't be scared, she said as he glanced away. You'll like them. It's your mother and my mother together. Look. She showed him the top few photographs and stopped at the one with the 2 children in it. The boy was slim and dark. The girl was smaller with chestnut brown hair. They were holding hands with their mothers. It's us, Mary said softly. It didn't make sense at first because I thought I hadn't been to England before. But now I think my mother must have brought me here when your mother was ill. Martha told me they were very close, so I think she came to see her twin, your mother, one last time before she died. And then afterward, she couldn't bear to talk about it. And so no one ever mentioned it to me. Isn't that incredible, Colin? That we met when we were young and neither one of us can remember? And look, I think we were inside the secret garden. Colin's hand had started to shake. He pushed the picture away. No, I don't want to see, he said. His voice was trembling with emotion. But isn't it extraordinary? Said Mary, her eyes shining as she rushed on. And do you know what's even more extraordinary? You are walking in this picture, Colin. You don't have a wheelchair or a hump, and you don't look ill. Colin, look. No, Colin exclaimed, shoving at her with both hands as she tried to put the photo back in his lap. No, I don't want to see. You're just doing this to hurt me, and you're just jealous because my mother loved me and yours didn't love you. Anger rushed through Mary, and she moved to slap him, but she stopped herself at the last moment. But he had already started to scream. Desperately scared that they would be overheard, she clapped her hand over his mouth to silence him. As they grappled with each other, Colin lost his balance and toppled forward out of his chair, pulling Mary down over too and knocking over one of the dummies that was next to them. It crashed into the one next to it, and then they both fell over. Clothes were spilling everywhere. Mary sat up in a daze, and for a moment, she thought that they saw 2 hazy figures of her mother and Grace bending over Colin and looking at him with concern. Mary gasped, and then the ghosts vanished. Colin? Mary's voice was a little more than a squeak. Colin was lying on the floor, very still. His face was white, and his eyes were shut. She crawled over to him. Colin, are you all right? Colin? His eyes opened. Relief overwhelmed her. For a second, she thought she'd killed him too. She knelt beside him and helped him sit up. Where does it hurt? Where? She broke off as she realized something. Colin, you're back. She looked at him closely. You don't have a hump. Your back is just the same as mine. Of course it is not, said Colin angrily. It is, Mary insisted. She pulled his pajama top up and ran her hand along his back. I swear on your mother's life, I don't see any hump there at all. There's absolutely nothing wrong with your spine. He stared at her. His eyes were disbelieving. But my father said... His voice trailed off. No, my back is the reason why he makes me have my medicine. The medicine that burns and hurts me, he said. It doesn't make sense if I don't have a hump on my back. Mary stared at him wordlessly. He was right. This didn't make sense at all. Turning it over in her mind, she began to silently help him back into the wheelchair. His back might appear normal, but his legs certainly didn't seem able to hold his weight. It was really tricky to get him up. Be careful, he said as she struggled to lift him. You're telling me to be careful? Said Mary with a grin as she managed to maneuver him back into the seat. Slightly breathless, they looked around the room, and then they looked at each other. They shared a smile. I'm sorry, Mary said, and really meaning it. I didn't realize that bringing you here would upset you so much. It's hard, Colin admitted, seeing all my mother's belongings. Mary gave her cousin a sideways look. I saw your mother and mine, she admitted. His eyes shot to hers. Just now, when you fell. I saw them both leaning over you as you lay on the floor. I think I've seen their ghosts before, too. I thought I was imagining it, but now I'm sure that I wasn't. She shot him a warning look. If you tell me that I'm lying... I won't, he interrupted, because I don't think you are. I've never told anyone this before. But when the soldiers were here, and I could hear them crying out, I used to see my mother's ghost. She would appear and stand beside me. I always felt that she came to comfort me because she knew that I was scared. And now my mother has joined her, said Mary, wonderingly. Colin hesitated and took a hold of her hand, and they glanced around the secret room together. A room full of memories of twins who had meant the world to one another, and memories of a house that had once been very different, filled with light, laughter, and happiness, Mary thought, remembering Martha's words, and now it's just a prison filled with secrets. As she spoke, a cloud passed over the moon, and Mary saw the ghostly figures of her mother and aunt standing at the window together. They were gazing out in the direction of the garden. They turned and looked at her with a wordless appeal in their eyes. This time, she felt no fear, just curiosity. What do you want? She said to them. What do you want me to do? And then the moon shone out again, and the figures vanished, leaving just pale silver moonbeams tracing across the clothes on the floor.